Okay. Welcome back to another episode of Dear Single Mama. So this is part two of the Suffer in Silence series. And I just wanted to so we heard part one, we heard part of Carla's story. So if you're not familiar and you're catching up and you didn't watch part one, Carla is a licensed professional counselor. She's a single mom. She owns a business owner, a woman of God, and she also has her own practice in Alabama. So just to kind of give you guys a little bit, but make sure you go back and listen and or watch part one because this is part two of the Suffer in Silence series where we are just kind of talking about we both have very similar backgrounds. We both were married for a very short time, and to have believed and that we were both married to narcissists, and we just kind of talk about and walk through how we ended up at this point in our lives because we're both women of God. We're both prayer word. We're both heavy in the word, and it's like, how do we get to this point of everything? So I'm just gonna share my story again. If you didn't hear it, you go back to and listen to part one. If you are not subscribed, make sure you subscribe and follow this podcast. All right. So, Carla. So for me, my childhood was good. I didn't. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't perfect either. I wasn't one of those type of people who grew up in the urban community. I grew up in a fairly great neighborhood, very and still quiet till this day. The people that I grew up with still live in that neighborhood and things of that sort. So, but for me, I think it was that was a lot of misconception. So I grew up with my dad being a minister. My dad preached at a Methodist church. My mom went to a Baptist church. So I went back and forth. We would go hear my dad preach and go to both churches and do activities at both churches. But and this is not to shame my dad or anything because I love my dad. He's delivered, he's set free now, but I love my dad. But this is just a part of my story and it's going to make sense as I continue to share throughout this series. But I would see my dad Monday through Saturday be belligerently drunk, coming home drunk, engaging in, drug usage. And then on Sundays and get up and preach. And of course, when I was younger, I didn't understand. But as I got older, just something in my spirit was like, this is not right. I don't think, this is how this should be done. Monday through Saturday, acting like that. And so at an early age for me, it instilled in me, I'm not going to marry a pastor. I don't want to have any doings with anybody inside of the pulpit. I just don't want to do it. And it also instilled in me, I don't want to marry or be with somebody who drinks. I can't. If you even drink, I'm not dealing with you because I didn't think and I saw how my dad would go and take it out of control and not have any type of self-control to being like, you know what, yep, nope, none at all. I don't even care if you have control. I just don't want to deal with it. And funny, ended up marrying an alcoholic. So we'll get to that part, and which is it roots back. You guys will see how it goes all the way back to my childhood. But even in that, and so I can remember, like, kind of same with you, like my mom like wanted her to get rid of him, like thinking to myself, why are you putting up with this? Like, why do you have to deal with this? Like, you really don't have to deal with any of this. And so even within that, I too was molested as a child at a very young age. My parents don't know this, so if they hear this, they're probably gonna freak out, but it's my story, because they don't know, as a child. And so all of those things kind of put and instilled in me, number one, seeing my mom, because I can even remember my dad being in and out, in and out. I can remember when we would go with him at sometimes he would be belligerently drunk and driving. And it would literally scare the crap out of me to where even when I would get in cars with people at a certain age, or I wouldn't even get in a car. with somebody who had been drinking, even if it was one drink or whatever, because from what I experienced in my childhood, I remember going to the hood and my dad picking up drugs, and having to come back and tell my mother that. And it instilled, well, number one, it instilled in me. I use wisdom, but I don't have a fear of experiencing the hood. So to speak, if that makes sense. Now I use wisdom because but you can't go everywhere any type of day. But even within that, it instilled in me that, and seeing my mother work 2 jobs, seeing her being a single mother because my parents eventually divorced. And so I can remember this one particular day, I guess my mom was just fed up. I remember we came home one day and all of my dad's clothes were outside the house. And I remember him not coming back. Now, we will still see him, but I remember him not coming back. And I guess that was a pivotal moment for my mother when she had got fed up of dealing with it. But even in that, it was like, okay, like as I got older, and even through that, because my dad wasn't not he tells me all the time, and even his grandchildren. So I'm seeing he's realized his mistakes. But growing up as a child, my dad didn't tell me he loved me. My dad didn't say, "Oh, I think you're beautiful, great job." A C was a no-go in my household. So you see these little seeds of perfectionism, of independence, supernatural woman were put and instilled in me. Promiscuity was instilled in me. I lost my virginity at 13 years old. Like, that's very young. Like, because I was yearning and seeking that attention from boys. And it even got to a point to where it was men, to be very frank, because I'm like, well, boys don't do it for me. Let me go seek out that validation, that love for men, from men, which actually in hindsight was really low key rape. Because I really didn't know it was consensual, and I knew what I was doing, but I was also being taken advantage of because of my young age. And excuse me, I'll put in a note. That's the trigger. I need to put in a trigger warning. But it was just a lot was instilled in me, and that super ultra independence, and like I said, promiscuity at a young age. I can remember this one particular time. I was supposed to be at dance practice because I danced at school, and I had skipped school to go see a boy. Ended up staying way late over, not knowing how to ride the bus, how to get back home. The Negro didn't even give me bus fare back. Like, just like thinking back on it, like, what was I thinking? Like, you could have at least gave me bus fare back. Like, come on. But not even knowing how to get back. And I had just happened to tell one of my friends, and they got pressured by my dance teacher, and they told my dance teacher and my mother where I was. And I can remember the first thing that my mother did when she saw me was she slapped the crap out of me. That it wasn't like oh, are you okay? She slapped the crap. She was so pissed. And I get it. Like, you don't know where I was. You were worried. I get that as a parent now. But I can remember on the car ride home, me saying, I need love. I'm seeking love. And in that moment being ignored. Like, she literally said to me, hey, our parents didn't know no better. Like, to a certain extent, they didn't know any better. They were raised a certain way, and they transitioned that into how they raised us. But I can remember her shutting me down completely. And so then now you have the promiscuity, the shutdown, the not expressing myself when I really need to express myself. So when things were happening to me, I'm not saying anything. When I was being molested, I'm not saying anything. Number one, I was young. And there's a psychological term, I can't remember, when you can't even remember what age you were because of the trauma in your mind, just kind of try to shut it out so much. And so even in that moment, and by this time I was in high school, so there was a lot of stuff. And I mean, thank God eventually the molestation stopped. But I can even remember The promiscuity didn't though. Still being promiscuous, skipping school, dating older men at the age of 15, 16 years old, dating 18, 19-year-olds, 20-year-olds that I really had no business doing. Or whatever, being taken advantage of in hindsight, because that's what it was. I was completely naive. But even in that, just suppressing everything. And I'm probably kind of like all over the place because I don't really have no timeline of things, but just suppressing everything that was going on with me. And like I said, the promiscuity, it did not stop. Like it continued even and carried over into adulthood, probably like my mid 20s. So I was like, okay, this is old. Like, don't nobody want to do this no more. But even finding myself as an adult, still not expressing what I needed from my partners, still dealing with guys who did not treat me with the utmost respect, who took advantage of me because I was younger. A lot of people tell me you're younger, but you have an older soul. You're more mature. Well, I'm more mature because I did not have a choice but to become more mature because I dated and dealt with young men at a young age. So I had to and started realizing, well, you're not about to mess me over. I'm going to do it to you first. I'm going to get my lick before you get yours. And so it instilled in me this more maturity, or a higher level of maturity that I wasn't supposed to have at a young age. Like you said, supposed to be enjoying childhood, and I'm trying to figure out how I'm gonna skip school and how this grown man is getting ready to come pick me up so that I can skip school. I'm not saying that I really didn't enjoy it. Like I said, I did dance. I was in leadership. I did student government association for all 4 years. No, 3 years of my high school career. I was very involved in so, but it was just all of that compacted into one took a toll on me. And this was by the age that even at the point to where even with my mother, I couldn't go and talk to my parents about sex. We couldn't do that. That wasn't a thing. How we grew up in the churches, the only thing we knew was that you don't do it, or if you do it, they would say, "Oh, you're going to hell or you sin." But nobody sat down and broke it down to us. And I've even told this to my mother. Had the church and you guys explained it to us, why we don't have sex before marriage, what happens in sex before marriage, this could happen, these are the possibilities, instead of that whack sex education class that they have with white people trying to teach black kids. And I'm not racist, but it's the truth. Like, we don't understand it that way. We didn't get what they were talking about, and the whole banana, it was really stupid in so many words, because it should have and could have been explained to us in a better way than that, because even just within that, we would have done better. I believe I would have done better had I known better and got a better explanation of what are the repercussions behind this, why we don't do this, why do I need to save myself for my husband and be pure before God. Like, really breaking those things down for us, I think that a lot of things would have been different for all of us. And so, like I said, I'm just going to kind of stop there, because that's kind of what happened to me. And that's how I ended up in the type of relationships that I ended up in, because I was so broken. Like, at this point, it now became to that place of where, well, I'm seeing that I'm getting back over on these dudes, but they getting back on me and it hurt a little bit more. So it's like, well, I'm just gonna push back and I'm just gonna chill and then suppress that. But then even in that, my kindness became a thing that was used as a weakness, as a tool to manipulate, to do things with me. And even within that, like, as I studied and began to dive deeper into what narcissism is, I realized that even from high school, I had friends that were narcissists. That even way before I met my ex-husband, I was with somebody that was a narcissist, and it's like, wow, like this was like a pattern of things that were leading up to that. And I was like, well, what am I doing? The hard truth was that, not saying that any of it was my fault, but I looked back at myself and I was like, what is attracting this type of spirit? Number one, because I think I'm a very down to earth, cool chick person. I'm not with the drama. I'm very like real chill, like real cool. What is attracting them to me? Because I don't like it. I don't want no dealings with it. It's very traumatic. Even to the point to where with one I was coerced and manipulated into doing something sexual that I did not want to do. And so it comes with a lot that people really don't understand, and why it is so important, especially us as like single mothers. Like, you really got to deal with that. Like, you really have to deal with your trauma. You really got to dig deep. And I'm thankful now that mental health is becoming a bigger conversation, or else we would have had a whole nother generation of messed up people. I mean, now we have hope because, we got Sexy Red or whatever, Jesus. But, there's still a little bit more hope because there's more conversation surrounded around mental health. And so that's just a little bit about my part and my childhood with me, and part of what led me up to getting married to someone who I believe was a narcissist, because he wasn't clinically diagnosed, but based off his symptoms and how he treated me and the things that he said and the gaslighting and the love bombing, I believe that he was such that. And so for you, Carla, on your end, what was that moment for you, and what led you up into your relational history? Because at this point you're 13, 14 years old. Kind of walk us through that.
I do want to pick up something that you said early
Yeah.
on, kind of like you say, like I wanted my mom to just kind of leave, this person also.
Yeah.
And the thing about not having control as a child, when you
Mm.
find something that you can control,
You
you have to,
control it
yes,
fully,
yes,
and even in a negative
yes.
way too.
Mm,
Yeah.
right. And so when you started talking about, being promiscuous and all of that, it comes
Hmm.
from needing control. And you can't
Control.
do that.
Yep.
And a lot of people who have even been sexually assaulted, they start to they start to act out sexually
Hmm.
because they can
Yeah.
control that.
Yeah.
So it was like that at this point. I'm starting to realize, okay, I got a little bit of control. So like I say, I'm probably about 13 at this point,
Hmm.
and I already, like when I started thinking about being a mom, being a wife at 7, 8 years old, I was already in my head like, this is the type of marriage I'm gonna have. I'm not gonna do this.
Mm.
I'm not gonna put it like
Yeah.
what I watched my parents go through, other people in my family. I had the whole list of everything I wasn't gonna deal with and everything I wasn't gonna do.
Hmm.
So, in middle school you got little boyfriends, stuff like that, but nothing too serious. Um,
Yeah.
so turning 13, like I said, we had finally moved out of his house and we had moved into our own apartment. Things were getting better because she wasn't dealing with them for a little while. Like you say, in activities, I was cheerleading, things
Hmm.
where like you do have some positive things, but
Yeah.
some of those what you more consistently see is what's going to be your experience most of the time.
Hmm.
And if you experience more negativity, then that's just what it is. Um so me and my sisters, we've, like I say, we've always been extremely close. And when we lived in that apartment, we got closer because sometimes, like when I say my mom would change, like she would just put us on punishment. Like we already didn't have cable, so we watching the same movies. We start having like concerts and stuff. Our mom is always working or just doing her thing. So we're just spending a lot of our time together.
Hmm.
So one time I can remember like he started coming back around and my mom's in the room with him and me and my sisters, we were in the living room, just talking, just spending time with each other. And somehow it came up um, about the molestation.
Oh,
And my baby
wow.
sister basically said, like, yeah, he's touched me.
Oh,
So at this
no.
point, I'm like, what? Like, if I'm 13, she's about 7 or so.
Oh, no.
So I get upset and I'm like, that's a no-no. So
Yeah.
my older sister, like I said, she's very much outspoken. And so when my little sister had said something, like I felt inclined to like say like it happened to me too. And
Yeah.
my older sister was just like, we gotta tell.
Mm,
So I'm just like, at this point, I'm like, no, let's not tell because like my anxiety, I already done look, this man, he loved guns. He had guns in his house. I'm like, what if he get upset and shoot all of us? You just start
mhm.
thinking all these things. And so finally I was like, okay, you can tell. Like, I'm not gonna say nothing, but I want you to tell him. So our baby sister at the time, she was like, no, no, like, don't say anything. So, it just get like we had this back and forth, and now we trying to be quiet because our mom is in the room back that, it's an apartment, it's not that big. Like, we're trying to literally like figure this out, and it's just like,
Yeah.
we just decided we weren't going to say anything. We're just going to keep it to ourselves, all that different type stuff. But
Mhm.
for me at that time, a new hate was formed because, it was one thing to do it to me, but you didn't do it to my little sister now. Like,
Yeah.
I hate you at this point,
Yeah.
So we started doing like little devious things at that point. Like we would spit in his drink. We would just start doing like little mean things that nobody knew about.
Mhm.
Um,
So
so
nothing was never your big older sister never said anything.
mm-mm,
Yeah.
no. So we just all, just hate him even more. That's when, like I say, really the nonchalantness started, having more of an attitude, all of that different type stuff. So when I got to high school, like you say, I was 13. I had lost my virginity in 8th grade, but I was just kind of curious then. Like it wasn't.
Mhm.
But in high school, it kind of took on a different form. Like I started realizing, like you say, going to high school, older guys were talking to you,
Yeah.
all this different type stuff. A child that don't
You
get
started
attention.
realizing the power that you have.
Yeah. So it's
Mhm.
like, oh, okay, so I can do all of this, like all these different things going on, like
Yeah.
they responding like this, like, it's like, okay,
Mhm.
I like that,
Yeah.
and so for a long time, sex was a way for me to cope.
Mm.
It
That right
became
there.
an outlet. Like I
Yep.
literally, nothing in my life was happening. Like I'm in this moment, nothing exists. Like I can
Mhm.
drift away,
That right there.
um, so that's what it kind of turned into.
Mm.
And so ninth grade year, I can remember I met I would say my little first love.
Mhm.
I had met him at a party or whatever like that because that was something else that I was doing in high school. Like we had a little dance clique and we would go to parties and dance on the weekend and stuff like that was my other outlet. So
Mhm.
it was like I was living a different type of life. So when I had met him, it was kind of cool or whatever. Like he was really nice. Like the other guys, well, the one other guy that I had sex with prior to him, like that's just all it was. He had decided to be with somebody else. So I was like, okay. Um, when I had met, I would say my first love, like it was different. Like our moms had met each other and they liked each other. So, it was easy to be like, oh, can I go spend time over here? Or, can he come over here? That's all it would be. And, we would sneak off, like you say, and do whatever. So even in the meantime, still having to deal with this guy because my mom is still with him. And at this point,
Mm.
he was, like I say, wanting to spend more time with me. He would take me to the shooting range on Tuesdays, and I, at that point, I was real big into like music. At one point in my life, I wanted to write beats and well make beats and stuff for artists and stuff. So he actually had a friend who would do that. So he would take me to
Mhm.
his house and, um, just do all that. I'm always on guard because it's like, you done did this twice. I know you've done this to my sister now. Like, like, yeah, we're doing these nice things that I'm into, but, I still don't like you.
Mhm.
Um,
Can
so,
you pause right there really quickly? So I want to kind of pinpoint what you said really quickly, that because even to my molester and most molesters, they start off with that niceness of
Yes.
doing things for you, coming in, loving you, and showing that for you. Because my molester did the same thing. Like, there
Mm-hmm.
was one moment, and it was a female. So there was
Right.
one moment where it was like, oh, nice, nice, lovey dovey, and then, oh no, mean, 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 nice, nice, nice. It was like this trick of the enemy, and that's how you know it's something that's not of God, because it was so much confusion around it. You didn't know what to think. You thought you was good, and then the next moment they doing this, and now you feeling like this, and now your emotions are all over the place. Okay, I just wanted to kind of
No.
pinpoint, because that's
Yes.
a cycle,
Yes.
and that's the same repetitive behavior of
Right.
most people who molest.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, sorry, didn't mean to
Yeah.
cut you off.
And that is no, and that's the cycle too that I dealt with in my marriage, like you say. And it
Mm,
was,
yeah,
but
me
we'll
too.
get there.
Yeah.
So yeah, so even during these moments where he's taking me to do all these things that I'm interested in, he started getting me to smoke weed. Like, he smoked weed and he was like, "Oh, just try it."
Mm-hmm.
And I would be like, I really don't want to. So like I say, we still have to remember I'm very quiet at this point. Like, I'm
Yeah.
not gonna push buttons too much. I'm not gonna, start no conflict because, I dealt with enough conflict with my parents. Like, I don't want it to escalate.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I think, and I struggled with even admitting this, as I got older, when I realized what it was, this is how the people pleasing started. Um, he wants
Mm.
me to smoke weed, so it's like I really don't want to, I don't want to do that, but he's teaching me how to roll a blunt and smoke weed and stuff like that,
Mm.
and I'm just like just doing it because he's pressured me to do it, and it's like, oh, okay. Um, and even though he was starting to spend like all this time with me individually, like I didn't want to be spending time with him, but if I told my mom, like, I don't want to spend time with him, she's gonna ask why. She wasn't the type of mom to just let your answer be your answer. It's gonna be like, well, why don't you want to go spend time? So it was
Right.
almost like I felt forced, to kind of do that. Um, so me and my boyfriend, like I said, at this point, sex is a coping skill. So I wasn't able to see him. Like, we can't drive.
Yeah.
I can't see him as frequently as I would need to have sex to deal with the reality of everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Because now I'm
Yeah.
smoking weed and I really don't even want to be smoking weed. And it's just
Mm.
like, what the world? So I started dealing with, other guys at the school or whatever, because we didn't go to the same school. And,
Mm.
when I did see him, I had eventually told him, like, yeah, I've been cheating, and he would be upset, like, we supposed to be getting married, in the future,
Yeah.
but I just, thinking back, just really realizing, like, I had to do something.
Mm.
I wanted to be in a relationship because I always had the idea like, oh, I want to marry my high school sweetheart and all those different things.
Yeah. Don't
But
we
it's like,
all?
yeah, but it's like I really was in a place to where I couldn't do that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
um, so at this point, our mom wasn't allowing us to have a phone either. Like, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
she would have a phone, sometimes she wouldn't. So it got to the point where my older sister, I found out like she had a phone. I'm like, how you get a
Mm-hmm.
phone? So she basically said like our grandma had, gave her a phone. At one point, her dad even gave her a phone. So I'm like,
Okay.
so talking to my grandma, she eventually, give me a secret phone. So
Mm-hmm.
we got our little phone, keeping secrets, like you say. It gets to the point of I'm sneaking out. I got this
Yeah.
phone. My sister has an older boyfriend who has a car. Like, everybody loves him. I'm like, look, come pick me up at this time.
Right.
Because at that time I didn't want to cheat on my boyfriend anymore. And it's like, well,
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna need to see you more frequently.
Right.
And it's like I didn't understand, what was
I'm
going on.
about
But
to pull
looking back
up. The
on it,
pull up before it was a
yeah,
pull up.
yeah. So looking back on it, like I just needed to have my little outlet, my release, like, all the stuff. So I started sneaking out.
Yeah.
I'm getting real good at it. I ain't get caught for a long time,
Yeah.
so everything was going fine at that point because, I'm able to release. I'm having a good time with my boyfriend. Like, I'm setting up my future a little bit. Everything was pretty much okay. And
Yeah.
so all of a sudden, my mom starts having conversations because my older sister, she's about to graduate high school the next year.
Mhm.
So my mom starts having conversations like, we're gonna move to Florida when she graduates high school. Who we moving to Florida with?
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding.
The
It's
guy.
like, oh, so you're trying to move us out of state now. And at this point, like we're still visiting our dad. Sometimes I wouldn't want to go over there with him because I would rather go to the parties or go to the football game, be with my friends or something so I could like, have sex like we're discussing. So it would
Mhm.
be times where my dad would like try to come and pick me up and I would have to go down there with the police and be like, I don't want to go. So it was a lot of other stuff going on as well,
Mhm.
behind that, just trying, because it's like, at my dad's house, we weren't doing anything. Like, I don't want to go over there and just sit,
And just yeah.
like, I want to be over here doing my thing. So,
Mhm.
so it was just a lot of that stuff too, starting to get caught up in my parents' stuff as well. It's almost like you have like a secret life. Like you have all these things going on, and then you have these other things that people do know about, and then you have things that people don't know about.
Mhm.
So when she starts talking about, oh, we're going to move to Florida, and all these things, I was just like, no, I don't want to do that. Because I just started having thoughts like this person is real. I just felt like something bad was going to happen. Like
Mhm.
he's already doing these things, we're seeing our dad now, like we're really not seeing like her family like we were, but it's like, what happens when there's nobody around? Like,
Right. The
really,
isolation.
you already acting different, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
it's just like we don't have a phone. I got a phone, but you don't even know it. It was just,
Yeah.
what is going to happen when we get to Florida? I'm not going.
Mhm.
So when I kind of told her like, well, I want to go stay with my dad, she was like my mom, she wasn't gonna push us, too much on that. She was just like, okay, like if that's what you want to do, then do it. I'm like, okay, cool. So at that time, I started having conversations with my dad about living with him because I don't want to move down there, and he was like,
Yeah.
okay, that's cool, that's fine, like you can do that. Um, so during this time, um the guy was getting ready to leave to go to Florida. He's
Mhm.
still, spending time with me every week. And the last time that we spent time together, because he was getting ready to move, um, he he was like, we was just, laying there talking like usual. And well, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, like he was like, well, I wanted to give you something before I left. And I was like, okay. And so he gives me like this DVD, and it was Aquila and the Bee. Like I love that movie
Mhm.
at that time. Like I say, I thought I was gonna be a spelling bee champ too at one time.
Yeah.
He gives me this movie, and I'm like, okay. And so he was like, I want to give you something else. And I'm like, what? And so he like gets on top of me and tries to eat me out. And I
Oh
clamped
no.
my legs like really tight. And I was just like frozen up, like, what the fuck? Like before,
Yeah.
it was just touches here and stuff like that. But and then he stopped and he was like, I'm just joking. And I was just like, yeah, no. This
No,
why
you
I
weren't.
ain't moving to no damn Florida. Like,
Yeah.
So I was glad like I didn't have to spend time with him anymore because he was getting ready to move. And um the tension between him and my older sister and my mom was just getting worse. Like my mom and my older sister would fight sometimes. Like one time prior to him moving, now by this point too, remember when I said we used to do like little devious stuff to him?
Mhm.
One night, we actually popped his tires. Well, my older sister did. We had decided like just pop his tire, and then maybe he might get hurt, and he might be out the picture.
Yeah.
So, well, she went and did it, and it was just like we heard this whole. It was I never know a tire pop sounded so loud.
Mhm.
So maybe a few minutes after that, he had left, and maybe about 10 minutes after he left, my mom came in there. She looked at us. She was like, I'm gonna ask y'all one time and I want y'all to be honest. And she was like, did y'all pop his tire? And we all said no, of course. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
And they
Yeah.
was like, she was like, well, the police says it looked like somebody cut it with something. So we like, we don't know, like we've been in this room the whole time. Like, what you mean?
Right.
So it was stuff like that. But this one particular time, him and my older sister had got into it, and he had kind of like grabbed on her wrist or something, and my older sister was very upset, and my mom was basically getting on to her about it, and she was like, how you gonna confront me and not confront him? So at this point, my older sister was like, I'm gonna leave the house. So she left the house for a
Like
little
for
while.
good or just for
Mhm,
that particular
mhm.
moment for good?
No, she moved out. She was just like, yeah, no. So she actually went to stay with her friend for a little while, and I only saw her at school. Like that was another moment, like we're splitting up.
Separate.
So it was just like a lot of craziness going on, towards that end. And I'm just like, I'm just ready for all this to be over. Like I'm looking forward to moving with my dad. So it was a lot. He had eventually, like I say, ended up moving. We had one more incident because that was the incident when I had got caught sneaking out. Um the door made a chime and I got called, and my older sister was texting me like, you need to come back home. And I'm like, no, I'm out the house now. I'll be
Right.
back. So that night I spent the night with my boyfriend. I was like, I ain't going back to the house tonight. Like I would just go to school because his house was literally like 2 minutes from my high school. So I would go
Hmm.
back to school. So after that, my mom had had her boyfriend at the time check me out of school to whoop me, and after that incident, he ended up moving away. And so I realized like, okay, I can't sneak out anymore. So like you say, started skipping school. So I was like,
Hmm.
okay, well, I'll just skip school and you won't know. Never got caught doing that. So things just kind of escalated as much as possible. So
It was that
this
spiraling, that out of control, that spiraling.
and so after that, it was inching towards my sister getting ready to graduate. I know that I'm moving with my dad. My younger sister was going to go with my mom to Florida, my older sister to college, all of that. So around this time, my mom had became a flight attendant. And if you know about flight attendants, they be gone a lot.
Yeah.
So our grandma was coming up initially to like be there with us and watch us and stuff like that. But she eventually got to the point where she, she had her own life. Like she couldn't just be with us all the time. So
Yeah.
most of the times we were literally like just living by ourselves. Those last couple of months of that school year or whatever. So that was fine for me at this point. I ain't gotta sneak up no
Yeah.
more. My boyfriend and my sister boyfriend, they have
Was
to come into
sneaking.
the house no more. Things,
Right.
life was just good at that point. Like this person is gone, all these different things.
Yeah.
Um, so I can remember one weekend I had went to my dad's house and he was like like you say, your parents never compliment you, tell you they love you, stuff like that. It was kind of the same thing. So this one particular day, he wanted to like cuddle with me and kind of talk to me, and he was just like, are you having sex or something like that? And I'm
Your
like, in my
dad or
head,
the
I was just like,
your
why you
dad or
asking me that?
your mom's boyfriend?
My dad. My
Okay.
mom's boyfriend had moved to Florida at this point. Like
Yeah.
he moved way prior to when she was moving.
Okay. Okay.
So he was out the picture now. Um so my dad was just like, are you having sex? And I was just like, why are you asking me? Like in my head, I'm like, why are you asking me this? Like,
Right.
we don't have these type of conversations. So I was like,
Right.
and
That part.
he was like, you can be honest with me, all this different type of stuff.
Hmm.
And so I'm just like, so I was like, yeah, I had told him, and he was like,
Hmm.
okay, and that was kind of like the end of that conversation. So when it
Hmm.
came time to me getting ready to move with him, me and my mom, we started having a lot more friction.
Hmm.
Um, like you say, one time I had a hickey on my neck and she saw it, and like your mom did, she slapped me too. Um, she didn't try to have a conversation of,
Hmm.
well, let's talk about safe sex. What's
Yeah.
going on? Like, it wasn't nothing like that. It was just anger and aggression. And I just remember feeling like bad because I'm already feeling bad, but it's just like, I don't know why I'm doing these things, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And, you know,
That part.
and I
The
was
not
like,
knowing, you just doing it.
right. So it's
Yeah.
just like, okay, you know, so she had slapped me or whatever, and I was just like, okay, whatever, you know, nonchalant, like I'm gonna keep doing my thing, like I don't care about
Mm-hmm.
that. So we had started having a lot more friction, and um, she would like get in, she would say things to me about my dad sometimes, and I can remember one time telling her like, well, he just did those bad things to you. He hasn't done anything to me for real. You know, I remember telling her
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that, like, you
Mm.
know, I don't care what you're talking about, like he ain't did it to me. So, she was just so again, this next point, I go with my dad, and you know, this one time he was like, do you think it's right that your mom wants me to pay her child support when you're going to be living with me? And in my head, I'm just like, well,
This ain't got nothing to do with me.
right. So, but
Yeah.
it's like, no, I guess not, you know. And he was like, okay, well, I basically have this paper that I need for you to sign, basically saying like you agree that that's wrong. And so I was like, okay. Um, so when I signed the paper, he had like his hand on the top part of it, so I couldn't really see like what it was. And I just kind of
Mm.
signed it. Like you say, people please and peer pressure, like it's your dad.
Yeah.
You're not gonna
Did you
push.
ever find out what it was?
Yeah, that might be, I'm looking at the time, that may be part three of how
Yeah.
this transpired. So I can remember maybe a little while after that, my mom came home and she was just mad. And she was basically like, you done signed this goddamn paper. And I'm like, what's she talking about? And then I kind of remember, I'm like, what are you referring to? And she was kind of telling me what the paper was about, but I didn't understand at that point. And I was like, because she was just mad at me, she just was like, acting like I was betraying her or something like that. And she was
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm not that bad of a mother. And, you know, and I'm just like, what are you talking about?
Mm-hmm.
So I just basically told her, like, he told me it was about like some child support stuff. And then when she realized he lied to me about what it really was,
Yeah.
you know,
She calmed down.
she calmed, yeah, she did. And also during that time period, she basically had told me that he had told her that I was having sex, you know, all that different type stuff like that.
Mm.
Because even when she saw the hickey, like I lied to her then, but he had eventually told her, and she said it in a way like, oh, he's trying to make it seem like you talk to him and you don't talk to me, you know, and all this type of stuff. And I'm like, I ain't really talking to none of y'all. Like,
Yeah. Right.
that started that was kind of the open door to the friction between my mom, my dad, and me. You
Mm.
know, I'm just thinking like when I move with him, I just move with him and it's going to be the end of whatever I was going through. That's the way I saw it. Like, I'm
Mm.
just trying to end the abuse that I'm going through over here. So I'm just trying to move over here. Like,
Yeah.
I didn't understand it was going to be this whole, you know, big old commotion and things like that. Um, so eventually, um, I end up moving with my dad that summer. My little sister went to Florida with my mom, you know, for a little while. I start at this point, this is when I really realized I started resenting my mom. I felt like for all these years,
Mm.
my older sister would always say, like, you're choosing this person over us. Like, she would always say those things. And I feel like her moving kind of solidified that. Because I always had the thought, like, if your child is saying, like, they don't want to move somewhere with you, like, why would you kind of end a relationship with your child to go and move with this person? You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
why are you okay with that? You
Right.
know, so I start more thoughts of something is wrong with you. You know, people just treat you, you know, like this or whatever like that. So it just began it getting sticky at
Mm.
that point. Also my little love, he done broke up with me because
Yeah.
somebody done lied to him and said that I was trying to talk to him. Somebody that I had talked to in middle school. I'm like, I didn't even talk to you in years. Like, but he believed
Yeah.
because of, you know, the history of things. And so I
Right.
didn't have my little boyfriend no more. Like, my older sister was finna go to college. My younger sister was finna move to Florida. Like, we're
It was
finally gonna
just
be
you.
separated for the first time for real, for real. Like, you know, that's when I would say a little bit of depression started when I could
Mhm.
notice it, but still really not understanding like what was going on
Putting
with
language to it.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
when I moved with my dad, like I say, I was with him for probably like a month and a half. You know, I hadn't seen my mom, hadn't seen my little sister, like none of my family. I was just with him. So this one particular, and like I said, at this point, I resent my mom. Like I was kind of angry at her. Um, so this one day, my mom comes to the house, and I see her because like my room is in the front. And I see her kind of like walking up to the house. I'm like, what's she doing here? Like, why is she here? And so I end up texting him like, my mom is here because at this point, why are you here? Like, you supposed to be moved. I'm not coming with you. Like, you're not coming to get me. You know,
Mhm.
like what's going on? Um, and even at that point, like my dad was taking me to go meet with like a guardian light. I didn't know like for what
And
he
who?
a guardian light. It's basically like an attorney for a child. Like you
Oh.
talk to them
Okay.
and then they talk for you in court.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
But at that time, he was painting it like, we kind of have to do this so your mom don't try to come and take you from me. And so I couldn't understand because it's like, well, don't y'all both have custody of us? Like,
Right. Y'all
why
got
would she
split
come take
joint
me? She's
custody.
about to move. Like,
Yeah.
ain't coming to get me, you know. So I just go along with it. I tell the lady, like, yeah, I just want to stay with my dad. You know, I'm not telling her no real reason why because me and my sisters have made this pact, like we're never telling anybody what's happened to us, you know, all these
Mhm.
different things. So it's just kind of like, you know, I just don't want to go. So that opened the door. So when my mom came to pick me up, my dad had called the police, trying to basically say like, she's not supposed to be getting her. They hadn't yet gone to court. So I was kind of upset, like, why are you coming to get me? Like, leave me alone. Like you know, you can go
Mm.
live your life. You know, so when I actually so I had to go with her because the last like court custody order, she had like sole custody or whatever like that. He just had visitation. So that's when I finally found out what all those papers that I had been signing was, why I had been going to see this Garnett item. You know, it was kind of like um my dad was basically trying to get custody of me and my little sister.
Hmm.
And basically he had used me to be able to do that.
Oh
And
wow.
even over the years, sometimes like my stepmom in the mix, she would her and my dad too, they would try to act like friendly with us and they would want us to tell us stuff. So remember when I say like we hated her boyfriend, we would say certain things over the years about him to
Oh.
her,
So
certain
they
things.
were kind of building up a case.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes. And so that whole summer, that's when I kind of realized. So I was just like, wait a minute. And so my mom, because like, you know, when you do court documents, they have to put everything in there. And so my mom was just really upset, you know, and that's when I was like, oh, so my dad just kind of betrayed me. Like, we're thinking, you know, we're just saying things in confidence or, you know, just, you know, whatever like that. And you
Mm.
are now using this for your advantage now
Using
that
it.
you can. So at
Yeah.
that point, I didn't want to live with my dad no more. You know, I was just kind of
Mm.
like, why did you feel the need to kind of do this? Like, why did you feel like you had to act like you were one with like why you couldn't be real? You know, at that point, it's just like
Yeah.
you could have just been honest about what you were doing. Like you didn't have to kind of lie and be sneaky about it.
Right.
So at that point, I got this stuff going on with my mom. You know, now it's the door's just a little open where I kind of got something going on with my dad now. Um, and at that time, I wasn't able to have sex with nobody because we had moved to a whole different, this was a more urban area. And, you know, those kids, they was coming to school high, they was fighting all the time. Some of the girls were
Yeah.
friends. I'm like, y'all ain't my type of, you
Yeah.
know, like things like over there. They was like, oh, you real uppity and you sedity. Call me what you want.
Yeah.
I'm talking to none of y'all. Yeah.
Right.
So so like I say, that court stuff really lasted the whole summer. And
Mm.
so I can remember because we were with our mom during that time, and I can remember the last day when they were making the decision. My mom just, you know, came out crying like, he got them. And so that's when we realized like we're both really going to, you know, live with our dad. And it was
Mhm.
just kind of like at this point, I'm like, I can't trust you. Like, I don't want to be with you, you know?
Mm.
So I felt like I could protect myself better if I had a went with my mom. Like I know what's going to happen there. You know, I can just kind of maneuver a little better. But with my dad, it's like I don't know what to expect now.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
it got really bad. Like I had stopped eating, you know, a little bit. Um, our mom had ended up going to Florida. And you know, so during like her visitation time, our grandma would come and get us and we would just spend time with her. Or our cousins would come get us and we would just spend time with like people in our family.
Mhm.
So during this time when I was with my grandma, I had met another guy. You know, that was my little second love. The worst. Now he really paved the way
Yeah.
for a lot of stuff in adulthood.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I started being more okay with it because I can have sex again, you know?
Mhm.
And he was more like a little bad boy, so he was for it too, you know? Like,
Yeah.
we met at church and stuff, but, you know, I would go back, you know, to his grandma's house and, you know, she was just real, you know, timid and stuff. So, you know, it
Mhm.
was just kind of like, it was a little okay.
Mhm.
Um, so my dad started he started being more meaner. So like I say, he just started doing things. So all one day he basically came to us and was like, if your mom don't pick y'all up, y'all can't go anywhere like on the visitation time. So it's like,
Oh, so now he's taking y'all away from the other family members.
yeah. So
So
it's
it's kind of almost like a repeated cycle of the boyfriend.
yeah.
Jesus, yeah.
So he starts like, if your mom don't come pick y'all up, y'all can't go. And it's like, well, you know, she's not picking us up. She lives in Florida. Like, you already know
Mm-hmm.
that's not going to happen. So, you know, it came a point where my grandma would drive literally like 2 hours, 2.5 hours. Like, she lived far away. She was driving to come and try to pick us up, and he wasn't letting us go. You know, cousins, like, different people were trying to come and pick us up, and, you know, he wasn't letting us go with them or whatever.
Mm.
So that kind of lasted for like a little while. Um, so that made me dislike my dad even more. You know, it's just like,
Yeah.
then all of a sudden, like he would, he would take my phone, like, okay, you don't have a cell phone anymore. You know, you can't talk to anybody. So when I tell you, like, I started losing weight, when I started living with my dad, I probably weighed like 115, 120. And I was always been short, like 4'11, so that's a good bit of weight. Um, so I remember like during the time when I did have my phone, I had text my mom like, can you please like just move back and try to get us again? Like, I don't like being over here, you know. It was just too much, you know, like we was just literally in our rooms most of the time. There was no bond and you know, he living his life, you know, we doing our thing. He's just becoming, you know, more strict, like, y'all need to get in here and wash my dishes and, you know, just real, just a whole different person. It's like,
Yeah.
okay. Um, so my mom was like, "Oh, you want me to come move back?" And I was like, "You know, yeah, like I do." So I guess something was going on with her relationship, and you know, she eventually ended up moving back um
Mm.
to Georgia or whatever. So I was just like, okay, so when my dad had found out that she was she had moved back, like he would let us go sometimes because she was picking us up. So this one time when she had picked us up, we were um we were going shopping. And this is when I realized like something was wrong with me, but I didn't know what, because when I was at my
Mm.
dad's house, like I wasn't eating. Um, I was just laying in bed the whole time. I had stopped cheering. I didn't want to cheer anymore. I was just like, I don't want to cheer over here.
Yeah.
After everything that's going on, like I don't want to do these things. So we go and try on clothes. I can't wear a size 3 no more. I can't wear one. I can't wear a 0. Like I was literally 16 years old wearing a size 12 in children's clothes.
Really?
Yes. Yes. So my mom is in the store and she is just like, she's just crying. She's just like, what is happening? I'm just looking because, like I say, I'm nonchalant. I don't, at this point, I don't have any facial features anymore. I don't smile. Like, I'm just looking at her like, what's
Yeah.
wrong with you? Like, and she's just crying. And, during that time, she was trying to, she was trying to get me to eat, like begging me to eat. And I was just like, I'm not hungry. And then on top of this, the little boyfriend I got, he's cheating and stuff like that. And I'm just,
Yeah.
it's kind of like you say, you know, I had thought about my little first boyfriend. I'm like, well, I used to cheat on him. So in the beginning, I was like, it's okay. Like this is
Yeah.
my karma. Like I should, be dealing with this because I did this to somebody else. So,
Mm.
it was just a lot of stuff going on at that point. But that's when I say like really, really depressed. Um
Yeah.
so
So, Carla, we're going to stop there
mhm.
because I want you guys to come back and tune in because this series that we're doing, it may seem long-winded, but we're leading up and we're getting to a place. But we have to give you the backstory in order for you to understand why and how we got to that place that we got to in our individual marriages. We both were single mothers, both were believing God to get married, got married to not get a divorce, end up in divorce very early. And so tune in. Stay tuned for part 3. Again, if you have not watched or listened to part 1, go back and listen to part 1. Carla goes over more of her story from early ages, from very, very young ages, and just continue to follow along with this suffering in silence movement. Well, not movement, but the series, because we wanted to do this because we want you to understand and kind of know and have an idea that, like, hey, we know we can't be the only two, like, who have experienced something like this. We see it in the mainstream, even with that, but outside of the mainstream, for the other people who are not mainstream, we know that you can't be doing this alone. And so, by the grace of God, we are healing, we are walking through that journey. And so, we really just kind of, our hearts are really not to come on here and bash people at all. We're just telling our stories. Our hearts and our true hearts, really intention is to be able to help free somebody else, to be able to give the courage and the boldness to somebody else to leave that toxic situation. Now, we are not coming on here telling you to get a divorce. We're not doing that. We're sharing our story and want you to go and take that to God and go and decide that on your own. Because the both of us went to God before we did anything. We weren't just like, oh my God, divorce. We worked through it. We counseled through it. We did what we needed to do first. And then when things did not continue to work, we left. So that's not what we're doing either. We always are going to put you back into seek God, to seek the Holy Spirit on what you should do. But our true heart's intention is to know that you may be suffering, but you're not suffering alone. That's the whole thing. The other people out there, there's a community of people to coach you through and walk you through and to be able to help you through this situation, including God and the Word of God. And so if you're not following, make sure you hit that follow button. If you're listening to this, hit follow, leave a 5-star review. It helps build me up on the algorithm. Right now, I just checked the statistics. I'm number 51 on the list. I need y'all help to boost me up so that people in this message can get out to more people. This podcast can be seen and be known to more people. So again, I love you guys, and we will see you guys in part 3.